So you've heard that audio is one of the most important aspects of filmmaking. You've heard that music is one of the driving forces to creating an emotional response, what lenses to use, what cameras to buy. But there is one more pivotal element of filmmaking that is extremely valuable to know and understand, and is one of my favorite parts of the filmmaking process, and that is color. The way in which we color our wedding films are such a huge selling point for couples when they are searching for wedding videographers. It does so much more, not just from an artistic or story perspective, but it can be one of the leading causes to you either getting booked or overlooked. I honestly have had so many couples tell me that the reason that they booked me was because of my color, because of the way it made them feel and how natural and genuine it felt, which told me that in the grand scheme of things, how important color is in your wedding films. So for today's video, I want to talk about how I color grade my wedding films to get a beautiful cinematic look that keeps couples coming back time and time again. But before we dive into the nitty-gritty of color grading, there are a few key points that I want to address and touch on because these foundations are so important for you to understand and implement so that you can get the most out of your camera's image. First up, let's talk about picture profiles. This is what's determining the characteristics of your image, how much contrast, saturation, sharpness, and hue that your camera is capturing everything. So it is important for you to make sure that your camera is filming in a profile that will allow for easy color manipulation in a natural yet pleasing way. If you are recording in a profile that is standard and you didn't customize any of the settings, you may find your image to be a bit more saturated and contrasted with no room for adjustments. It's much easier to add these qualities back into your image. It's a lot harder to remove them without reducing quality. The easiest way to do this is by shooting in a neutral profile within your camera. Every camera has a profile that is more neutral in the way it captures color. It's not too saturated or contrasty. The sharpness is dialed way back down. This way, when you bring all of your footage back into your editor, it's going to make your color grading workflow that much easier. Now, when it comes to choosing between log profiles and neutral profiles, I am more inclined to go with the neutral profile just based on the workflow alone. If you are just getting started, I don't recommend shooting immediately within the log picture profiles, as this is a profile that does take some time to manage and learn and understand so that you can shoot it properly, so that you are happy with your end result and not frustrated and wanting to pull your hair out because you either completely underexposed everything or you overexposed everything and just you're not getting the right look that you really wanted. So I do recommend shooting in a more neutral profile so that you can bypass all of those challenges and those obstacles that log does present, and you can easily speed up your workflow with just a click of a button. Second is going to be the power of proper white balance. Having proper white balance within your image is going to massively improve the look and feeling to your films. You definitely don't want to be filming in auto white balance, as this will cause a lot of color shifts throughout the day and within your frame, so that when you get back in your editor and you're trying to apply your LUT, you notice that the color is just shifting all over the place, and that is just not a very pleasing end result. This will cause your color to look inconsistent and create a disconnect for your viewer. The sweet spots when it comes to white balance, from what I have found, especially in outdoor and natural light environments, is going to be around 5600 Kelvin. So having your camera consistently set at 5600 Kelvin for those natural lit environments is going to give you the best look in those situations. Or if you are in a setting that is more orange and it's very dim, those low lit receptions sometimes where they have those orange lights, having your white balance set at a more lower temperature like 3200 is going to help you combat that. But again, having those practical lights that you can blast light into this scene so that you can still remain within the 5600 marker is going to be your best bet. But of course, you can't control every situation. So if you are in the situation where it's more orange and it's just not really pleasing at 5600, I do recommend dropping to 3200 Kelvin for this scene particularly. Then of course, the third thing is going to be correct exposure. This is obviously a given. You know, you want to make sure that you do have proper exposure throughout the day. You don't want to have too overexposed highlights, or you don't want to be too underexposed. And the best way to make sure that you are properly exposing your image is through two methods. One of which is by using your camera's histogram feature, or through the use of an external monitor and using their histogram feature. But either way, this is a great asset to keep your exposure set properly. And the way to read this is pretty simple. If your histogram is centered with no skew or clipping on either the left or right, this is how you know that you do have a properly exposed image. If your histogram chart runs a little too far to the left, this is letting you know that your image is a bit underexposed. And then if you run too far to the right, this lets you know that you are a bit overexposed. And then of course the second is by using the camera's meter system, which will allow you to know if you are either a stop under, a stop over. I like to stay within those parameters, whether I am either a stop under my exposure or 0 or a stop over. I don't really go over that or below. I just stick right there in the middle, as this is where I feel very confident and I love the results that I'm able to get within that range. All right, so now that we have run through the basics, let's dive into Final Cut Pro X and get to color grading. Now that we are in Final Cut Pro X, I'm gonna run through my exact process to color grading my films, and that is with my Unveiled Lut pack. I've curated about 8 looks that all have a unique characteristic to getting a beautiful, stylized look that has really defined my style over the last few years. These presets are officially live for purchase, and they are only going to be live for a short period of time, so make sure to snag them while you can. So diving in, I'm going to show you how I use my presets in my films, and I am in Final Cut Pro X, but you can also use these techniques inside of Premiere as well. The first look we're going to be diving into is Unveiled Moody. And this one is probably my favorite to use in a lot of my wedding films, just because of the rich, bold red palette that it offers. And it's very subtle, which is another benefit to this look, so it's not overpowering in the color. So right now I already have this look applied to this clip, so we are just going to start from scratch, right? So we are going to take this Unveiled Moody, we're just going to delete that, this color board, we're going to delete that. So right out of the gate, you can see that this image is not really properly exposed. It's a little bright, it's the contrast is a little, desaturated. So we want to bring in some of those elements back into the image before we apply our finishing LUT. So I'm going to come up here to my color board here, and I'm just going to drop the shadows a bit. About 15 is probably pretty good. I'm going to come over here to the highlights, drop those a bit, and then do the same for the midtones. And then another helpful tip that I like to do for a lot of my clips is for the shadows, I like to add -5 to the saturation, -5 to the highlights, and then +5 for the midtones. This is just a little color tip that I learned, and it is a very subtle way of just adding in nice balanced color to your image. And so I think this is a pretty good starting point. Just added in a bit of contrast. Really, that's all I did. Maybe just a hair of saturation. So let's just come over and let's just apply our LUT and see where it's at. So come over to the Unveiled Luts and Unveiled Moody. So right out of the gate, this is at 100%. So we don't really want to obviously have that. We want to dial it back a bit. And what I recommend for this look is about 65 to even 55%. So 55% is actually nice. I'm going to come up, maybe I'll do 65 for this one. And it's just a subtle change. It adds in a pop of color, and it really just helps elevate this image and give it more life, which is really what you want your LUTs to do. You want them to, work for you, not against you. You don't want to have to be battling them or have to add so much more color to get the right look that you're looking for. You want it to just kind of get you pretty much 95% of the way there. Now let's move on to the next look, and that is going to be the Unveiled Natural look. And this one, as we know, is very true to its name. It's very vibrant and very saturated palette, but still on the subtle side. Obviously not leaning into too much saturation or contrast, because I like to have a nice, subtle, and balanced image. So let's go ahead and just start from scratch with this one. Okay, so as we can see, it's a pretty flat image. This was shot on the Canon R6 in the standard profile. I do have custom settings for my Canon R6 profile, so if you want to check out those, be sure to reference the PDF that was available whenever you purchased the LUTs. All right, so starting off, we're going to come up here to the color board, and under exposure, we're going to drop the shadows again. We are going to maybe raise the highlights a hair on this, and we're going to drop the midtones a bit. And then actually, I'm going to come over here to the color, and for the midtones, I'm just going to add a bit more warmth. Not too much. That is good. Around 2% there. And then, yeah, I think I am ready to go ahead and add my finishing LUT. Come over here to Custom LUT. Grab the Unveiled preset, Natural. And then I'm going to set this to about 50%. And that is pretty good from before to after. And again, we were outdoors for this, so my temperature, my white balance was set to 5600, and that is going to give me a nice consistent look, especially for more of the warmth in the shadows and just a more natural and pleasing look overall. So make sure that you are keeping your white balance consistent for each lighting environment. And so as you can probably already guess, I'm not doing a lot to these images. I'm really just adding in a bit more contrast, maybe adjusting just some slight midtones, shifting it more in the warmer direction, and then applying the finishing look and setting that to about 50% intensity, which is, you know, a lot easier than creating a whole look on every single frame. These looks are going to help you just speed up your workflow and keep you moving forward at a really fast pace and just give you a nice overall look that is consistent, that's elegant, and that your couples are really going to love. All right, and coming over to the next look, this is a wedding we shot in Georgia. It was around golden hour, so the lighting was really nice and diffused. And this one was also shot on a Canon. So this was the Canon R6 in the standard picture profile. So right out of the gate, we do have really nice color already. So we won't do too much to this image. We're just going to add a little bit more crunch and give it a little bit more of a stylized look with the next look. So really, there's not much I need to do from a contrast or, you know, saturation perspective. I'm going to come over here, just grab my custom LUT, drag it on, and I'm going to add on my Venture look. And right out of the gate with the intensity here, you can see that it is a very rich, bold, red, earthy palette. And that is going to be really catered towards the more adventurous films. That color is just, I love the way it just adds so much to the detail, and especially during golden hour, this LUT is going to be absolutely perfect for that situation. So with Unveiled Venture right here at 55%, I don't see, you know, much else to really do. I mean, it looks good in my opinion. This is just like super fitting for the environment, for this couple, and it's kind of like a one and done situation. So let's go to the next frame. And right off the gate, we can kind of tell that this is a bit cooler, but just for the sake of speed, let's just come over here and grab Venture look, and then we're going to dial it back to about 50 before and after. Just a very subtle shift, but still gives you that elegance and that subtle pop and really stylized feeling. And to go a step further with these looks, if you want to create more of a filmic look, I do recommend grabbing Film Convert. This is an amazing plugin that you can really add some nice grain to your image. You don't want to use the film stock, you want to keep that turned off. But as far as grain, just a little bit goes a long way. I love to use this as like a finishing touch to all of my films, just to really add that cinema, just filmic look that I really love. It just really caters to the mood and the overall feeling, and I really enjoy this look. All right, now jumping into the Journey LUT. This one is another variation of the Venture, but focuses more on lush greens, warm highlights, and just gives you a nice, subtle, balanced look. So we are going to be going off of this frame right here, which was shot on the Canon C200. This was shot in, I think, 2018. So a little while ago, but we are going to use it just to kind of demonstrate just the variances of cameras that you can use these LUTs on, and ways that you can manipulate the image to get the look that you want. So let's go ahead and take off these effects here. All right, and again, this one probably, there were some mistakes that I made when shooting this. I was just getting familiar with the C200 at the time, so obviously we have some overexposed highlights. So what I want to do here is really kind of bring down some of those highlights in the back best I can. That's probably good. And then I'm going to introduce some more contrast in the shadows and then in the midtones as well. And this image overall just feels a bit cold to me, so I'm going to come over here to the color, and in the midtones, I'm going to bring up some of the warmth just to kind of add some more pop there. And then in the highlights as well, I'm going to drop the blue a bit and get some more yellow in there. And so from that to that, that's a pretty balanced color correction. So then now we can come down here to our color, custom LUT. I'm going to add in the Journey preset. And then of course I'm going to dial this back a bit, probably to about 50. Yeah, 50 looks good. And then from this right out of camera to our color correction to our custom LUT. So as you can see, it's a very nice, subtle, balanced, stylized look that doesn't go too overboard. It doesn't muddy up your color, doesn't muddy up your frame, but it is a nice balanced look. And that's really the ultimate goal for these presets, is to just basically take a lot of the guesswork out of it, to keep color simplified and keep it natural, but while also catering to the moody feeling and those nice natural tones. So this one is pretty good in my opinion, so we can go ahead and move on to the next one. And this look right here, this is from one of my most recent weddings. This was shot with the Sony a7S III. And as you can see, it's, the LUTs are working really well here. The skin tones pop. It's got a nice warm tone throughout the entire image, which I really like. And this one, really, I didn't do a lot to. I honestly just applied my LUT, dropped down the intensity to about 68%, added in some grain through Film Convert, and this one was good to go. Now, not all of your images are going to be like this. A lot of them will require some form of color correction, whether that is adding in some more contrast in the shadows and the midtones, pulling up the highlights, bringing down the highlights, adjusting your color temperature. All of those things will play a role in how these looks ultimately give you that end result and give you that feeling that you may be going for. But ultimately, it's just a matter of, finding what works for you, making sure that you are factoring in all of those different technicalities, making sure that you are shooting in a way that's catering towards this specific look and style. And of course, picture profiles are going to be a big factor in the overall look. You don't want to be shooting in a picture profile that is very saturated or contrasty, because then these looks are going to be, you're going to have to lower the intensity a lot, because it does have a lot of that baked into these looks. So you want to shoot in a profile that is more neutral. And I did include a couple of picture profiles from a variety of different cameras in the Unveiled Lut guide that you can find, ranging anywhere from the Canon C100, C200, C70, R6, the Sony a7S III, the a7 III, the a7 IV, and then of course the Lumix GH5, which I used a natural profile with some customized settings. All of those can be found in the Unveiled Lut guide so that you can make sure that you are shooting in the right preset. But ultimately, the picture profile you want is something that is more neutral with not a lot of saturation and contrast baked in. So whether that is something that you need to customize on your own, or if there's a picture profile that has something like this, that's the one I would recommend. So yeah, as you can see, I mean, turning off the effects, this is straight out of camera. You know, I didn't adjust any of the exposure. I didn't add any contrast, any additional contrast to this or saturation. I simply just plugged in my LUT, set it to 68%, which you can see dialed up was a bit extreme. So bringing that down to 68%. And then of course added my grain. And that to me was a nice, subtle, warm, adventurous look and feel. All right, guys, I could go on and on really throughout the entire lookbook of these LUTs, but a lot of it is going to be the same rinse, repeat process. Just making sure that you are color correcting before you dive into these looks, adjusting the white balance, unless you just nailed your white balance day of location. That's honestly the best practice, is to make sure that you are dialing in your white balance, you are exposing properly, and you are making sure that all of those settings are as fine-tuned as possible so that when you get back into your editor, you have to do very minimal color correction and get that look and feel that you are going for. All right, well, that is the end of this week's video. Thank you guys so much for sticking around. The Unveiled Lut Pack is officially live, which is so exciting to finally say. I am so excited for you guys to get your hands on these, and I hope that you find really great use out of them and they help you elevate your films and give you a style that you love. I know I certainly have had so much fun creating these over the years, and it really has helped me define my style, and I hope it really does help you speed up your workflow as well. And if you have any questions at all about the Unveiled Lut Pack, or you want to leave a review, please drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear your honest opinion on these looks, as it will help me just further create better content and even evolve these LUTs for future videos. Either way, it'd be so awesome to hear from you guys. And so until next time, keep creating and telling beautiful stories. Peace.